I'm fine.
Okay.
Not a problem.
Some more space.
Well, good morning and welcome. I'm Ken Weinstein, president of Hudson Institute. I'd like to welcome everyone, especially our very distinguished panelists this morning, our friends at the American Hellenic Institute as well, for coming to our conference on power shifts in the Eastern Mediterranean, the emerging strategic relationship between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus. I'd like to give a special welcome to our first speakers, the Ambassador of Greece, His Excellency Christos Panagopoulos, the Ambassador of Cyprus, His Excellency George Chakali, the Minister for Economic Affairs of the Israeli Embassy, Eli Groner, and the Honorable Brad Schneider, the Congressman from the 10th District of Illinois, representing the North Shore suburbs of Chicago, a prominent member of the Hellenic Israel Caucus, and a member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs. We had expected the former on International Affairs. We had expected the former chair of the House Committee on International Affairs, Congresswoman Eliana Ross-Lehtinen, here this morning. She had confirmed for the event and actually prepared a speech, but her schedule changed at the last minute, and the speech should be distributed to you in the audience. Rather than read it aloud, I would encourage you to read it. The issue we're discussing is obviously of deep interest to Congresswoman Ross-Lehtinen. Now, as politics and alliances in the Eastern Mediterranean shift, the region's security framework is being challenged on a daily basis. As we all know, today there are virtually no U.S. naval forces in the region, and America seems to have stepped back from its traditional stabilizing role. And this is particularly disturbing as we faced a number of years of turmoil in the Eastern Mediterranean since the beginning of the so-called Arab Spring. The vacuum of authority left by deposed leaders and a weaker U.S. presence has allowed radical Islam, assisted in many cases by America's strategic competitors, to become the region's most dynamic political force. Jihadist groups are now well entrenched in places from Damascus to Tripoli. And as we all know, the Syrian civil war has left over 110,000 dead and more than 1 million refugees in the region. Now, with U.S. policy increasingly looking towards Asia under the so-called rebalance, this means that our allies in the region are going to have to become even more important to assuring regional stability. And we face some challenges, as we all know, with long-standing allies. Under Prime Minister Erdogan, Turkey, once a close U.S. ally, has increasingly turned its back on the West, and we see Russian, Chinese, and Iranian naval forces increasingly active in the region. Now, against this backdrop of great challenges and strategic threats, there is a bright spot that we all know about, and that's the dynamic changes that are being unleashed through incredible human ingenuity, which has caused the Eastern Mediterranean's hydrocarbon map to be redrawn. The recent discovery of substantial natural gas fields within the Israeli and Cypriot exclusive economic zones, and the selection of the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, which will channel Azeri natural gas to the EU market through Greece, represent the only hydrocarbon reserves under control of pro-Western forces in this challenging region. These new energy corridors, when they come online later this decade, will open new and competitive routes for Europe to import natural gas from producers other than the Russian state monopoly Gazprom does not control. Adding new energy resources to the market will result, as we all hope, in downward pressure on prices, provide alternatives to Iranian and Middle Eastern energy, and consolidate both the Eastern Mediterranean and the Caspian Sea's energy within the European energy framework for the first time in history. In addition, these dramatic and important political energy changes are also the basis of a shifting geostrategic relationship in the region, and we're now seeing an important developing strategic relationship between Greece, Israel, and Cyprus, as each state aims to take advantage of their shared economic and security interests. These nations are, of course, the only Western democratic states in the region who share the same values and principles of the United States, and this triangle has the potential to play a much more significant role as a pro-democratic force and a force for hope and stability in the Eastern Mediterranean. Now, that being said, by way of introduction, I now have the pleasure of introducing my Hudson Institute colleague, Seth Cropsey, who leads our work on the Navy. To introduce this panel, let me say by way of introduction that Seth is a former Deputy Undersecretary of the Navy, a former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations, and he has written with great authority on U.S. naval issues and has recently published the book Mayday, that has received very positive reviews in a wide variety of publications, including the Wall Street Journal and the Weekly Standard, among other publications. I cannot imagine anyone better to help us look at these challenges or to begin our discussion of these challenges this morning than Seth.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Ken. Let me repeat Ken Weinstein's welcome to Hudson Institute this morning. The discovery of massive hydrocarbon deposits in the Eastern Mediterranean, their potential for brightening the economic futures of Cyprus, Greece, and Israel, the emerging relationship between the three states, as well as the U.S. role in promoting this relationship, the security challenges in the region, and what all of these mean for American strategy are the topics of today's conference. We're honored by the presence of an exceptionally distinguished group of speakers today. In fact, I would prefer to listen to them than to myself. So I will speak as briefly as possible by way of introduction, in the hope that there will be more time for their remarks and your questions. As Ken Weinstein noted on your chairs, I hope you will have found a fuller bio of our speakers. I intended to speak extemporaneously by way of introduction, but for the sake of brevity, I thought I would throw out the extemporaneous presentation and read from a script instead. The first panel today will look at the changing picture in the Eastern Mediterranean. These speakers are eminently qualified to do so. And by the way, we're going to go, for the sake of avoiding difficulties in protocol, from here to there. That will take care of my venture into protocol this morning, and I hope no one will be offended by it. Congressman Brad Schneider represents my home state, Illinois' 10th District, and Illinois is possessive. I'm not pronouncing the state. The state is called Illinois. He is a distinguished member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, as well as a member of the Hellenic Israel Caucus, which performs a valuable service by working to strengthen relations between Greece, Israel, Cyprus, and the United States. As Ken mentioned, Congressman Ross Leighton is not able to be with us, although I know she wants to be. His Excellency Christos Panagopoulos is Ambassador of Greece to the United States. This is the ambassador's third posting as his government's senior representative in foreign capitals, responsibilities that no doubt his service with the Hellenic Navy were important in developing. Those of you who know my connection with the Navy will understand what was an attempt at humor in the last sentence. His Excellency George Chakali, Ambassador of Cyprus to the United States, will continue the discussion or will actually initiate it. Ambassador Chakali has served in the U.S. prior to his current assignment, as well as senior positions in Northern and Central Europe. Eli Groner, Israel's Minister for Economic Affairs to the United States, is also here. He He has taken a career path that I hope our own State Department has noted. Minister Groner came to the diplomatic post after working in business, that is, for companies that are expected to show a profit. But as I noted a moment ago, I encourage you to look for greater detail in the bios that we've provided. After the speakers have completed their remarks, there will be time for questions and answers. I will repeat then what I have to say now, and that is we would much appreciate it if when you were recognized from the podium, you would identify yourself by name and organization. And with that, let me turn the floor over to Ambassador Chakali.
Thank you, Seth. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to be here and sharing some food for thought with you this morning on a topic that's, I think, very, very interesting. Basically, what I'd like to do is just focus on how we in Cyprus see the possibilities of creating a more stable and a more prosperous environment in the Eastern Mediterranean through the development of the energy sector, the influence that the energy sector can have on the geopolitics in the region, and on how the implications of this new dimension have already created an increased interest in what is going on in our part of the world, least of all here in the US. Very simply put, energy dependence on suppliers which are in a highly sensitive political geostrategic transition like Egypt, Algeria, Libya, Tunisia, but also on Russia, is causing many countries, not only in Europe but also in Asia and beyond, to look for alternative, more stable and less expensive sources to satisfy their energy requirements. These countries are now looking towards new potential energy suppliers like Israel, like Cyprus and Greece for their energy needs. Just to give you some brief background, we've been aware of hydrocarbon deposits in our subsea for several years. And in order to allow exploration and exploitation, Cyprus has been pursuing the conclusion of EEZ delimitation and cooperation agreements with all the coastal states with which we share sea boundaries. The delimitation agreements we've already concluded with Israel, Egypt and Lebanon have established not only the sea boundaries between Cyprus and our three neighboring states, but they are also considered as the boundaries between the European Union and the Middle East. These agreements provide legal security to all states concerned. They promote cooperation, both bilaterally and regionally, and also provide the necessary legal framework for international oil and gas companies to pursue exploration and exploitation of the hydrocarbons. The strategic cooperation between Cyprus, Israel, and Greece, the only three stable democracies in the Eastern Mediterranean, by the way, could in our mind be an excellent guarantee not only for security of energy supply, but also for stability and prosperity. In addition to the findings by the Texas-based Noble Energy in Exploration Block 12 of Cyprus's EEZ, which is adjacent to the large deposits in Israel's EEZ, let me add here that the Italian energy company ENI and the French Total have already been given licenses for exploration in other blocks of Cyprus's EEZ, where there seem to be very, very varied reasons for optimism. Cyprus has already announced its intention to build an LNG plant at Vasilikos, which is in the southern coast of the island, with a view to turning Cyprus into an energy hub for the region. The final choice that Israel will make concerning the method of exporting its own resources and the choice of route for those exports will also have profound economic and geopolitical repercussions for the area. There's also on the table the plan for the creation of an electricity cable, what's known as the Euro-Asia Interconnector, which is a proposed power grid interconnector starting from Israel through Cyprus and into Greece via the world's longest submarine power cable, over 620 miles long, providing a connection through Greece to the pan-European electricity grid. This trilateral cooperation is progressing at a very quick and a very steady pace. An MOU was recently signed by the energy ministers of the three countries in Cyprus, highlighting the intention to start joint development projects in the energy sector and promoting a sustainable energy source supply. This cooperation will extend in the fields of renewable energy sources, electricity power generation, and sustainable water supply. But this also opens up new areas of cooperation between our countries, covering such sectors as search and rescue, defense and security, counterterrorism, illegal migration, non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and the like. It will also create synergies in maritime security, food security, and water management, and will generate investment and business opportunities. Now, we see this whole process as an opportunity for transforming the Eastern Mediterranean into an area of common borders and shared interests for all of us out there. Much like the cooperation in the coal and steel sectors in Europe through the European Coal and Steel Community, which was the precursor, as everybody knows, of today's European Union. As I mentioned at the beginning, the prospect of joint hydrocarbons exploration has a huge impact on the geopolitics of our region. So it's our responsibility to see how best to use this gift that we have for the benefit of all the people in the region. It's not only an opportunity in our eyes for economic development, it's also part of a joint effort to work in good faith to create stability in a region that is very sensitive and very volatile. So to conclude, and I can cover any gaps that you think there are through your questions, in our efforts to create a safer and a more prosperous future for our citizens, we are proceeding to take advantage of our resources in a peaceful and a constructive manner in accordance with international legality. We hope that all our other neighbors in the region will take example and that they will see these developments in the same way so that we can have a joint effort of all the countries in the region for this common quest to create an area of peace, of security, of prosperity and stability. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Chakali. Ambassador Panagopoulos.
Next.
Please.
Do you mind if I stay here?
Not at all.
I've been in the Navy, but I'm aging now. Thank you. Thank you
This is
so
a
very
stable
much for...
platform here.
Yeah, that's better, if it's all right with you. First of all, I'd like to extend my warmest thanks for the Hudson Institute, this distinguished academic institution, for hosting us today to exchange views. Probably I should go over there. Sorry about this. Doesn't work. So I was just thanking you and the Hudson Institute for providing us the venue to exchange views on a very important, what it seems and it looks a very promising morning and afternoon, because we're going to continue with two more panels, as I understand it. And I'm grateful to my colleagues and also to the congressman who took the time, being a ranking member of the Hellenic Israeli caucus and not of less importance, a distinguished member of the Foreign Affairs Committee of the Congress, to be with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, the Eastern Mediterranean basin is currently witnessing major shifts of great geopolitical importance. Many significant developments are taking place in a wider, tumultuous region, which offers both challenges and opportunities at the same time. The volatile and unpredictable political environment might be breeding ground for potential threats. Certain new developments, however, offer promising possibilities. Now, on the side of challenges and threats, let's say, I can offer you the very acute and I would say explosive issue of uncontrolled immigration. Only yesterday, my Prime Minister took the initiative in view of our forthcoming presidency of the European Union to visit our partners in the European Union, Prime Minister of Malta, Prime Minister of Italy. That took place only yesterday, to raise again the issue of illegal immigration. We know that because of the situation created in this part, in the southern border, let's say, of the European Union, the issue of illegal immigration is becoming a very acute one. And it's not an issue of one country or two countries. It's a pan-European, I would say, a common issue of our Western community. That's why, apart from that initiative, yesterday's initiative, where he had the chance to discuss this with his colleagues from Malta and Italy, my Prime Minister, during his last visit here in the United States, back in August with President Obama, and 3 weeks ago with Vice President Biden, he had the chance to raise the issue, and the response from the highest levels of the administration was very positive. As a matter of fact, we do expect pretty soon to realize a visit of high-level commission from Greece in order to materialize the assistance that was promised from the United States. That's on the part of challenges. But in this fluid region, I would like to say that Greece has always been a reliable security provider and a strong factor of stability, offering to friends and allies the comfort of a stable anchor. This remains the case, notwithstanding the financial and economic crisis that I bet you are all aware that Greece has been going through in the last few years. The prospects of recovery are already within reach, and they do not affect at all the role of my country as a net security provider to the region. To the contrary. So I'm here today to offer you our point of view and talk a little about important synergies that are emerging among the three natural partners in this part of the world, that is Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. And I call us natural partners because Hellenes and Jews, these two historic peoples, have marked indelibly the foundations of the Western civilization. Let us recall that Greece, Cyprus, and Israel, as it was mentioned before, are all solid, fully fledged Western-type democracies in a region where democracy is not, unfortunately, in abundance in our days. In the last few years, the relations between Greece and Israel are getting deeper and stronger. Investing in continuity and pursuing common goals and objectives, just recently, in early October, the first high-level meeting of the Israeli and Greek governments, what we call G2G, government to government, headed by Premier Samaras and Netanyahu, who was held in Israel. Energy, a few sectors that we touch upon were energy, agriculture, investment, tourism, culture, and defense, just to name a few, were the sectors explored for further cooperation. Furthermore, the three countries, Greece, Israel, and Cyprus, have also been blessed with important offshore natural resources, resources they need to be explored, developed, and eventually head to the markets. Energy is fast becoming one of the main areas of our even ever stronger cooperation. The resources of the three countries can potentially address three sets of concerns in Europe. They can provide for environmentally friendly energy, they can provide for cheap energy, and they can provide for energy diversification, an issue very important to our American allies. The new emerging reality has compelled the European Union to advocate the concept of the so-called the East Med Corridor strategy. My dear colleague Bastos Sakalis just touched upon this. So the East Med Corridor strategy, which, by the way, the two upcoming Greek and Italian European Union presidencies will spare no effort to further promote. And that was a special topic for yesterday's summit between Prime Minister Samaras and Letta. It is within this strategy that the European Commission recently adopted a number of infrastructure projects, such as the Euro-Asia Interconnector, underwater electric cable linking Israel, Cyprus, and Greece, the liquid natural gas storage facility in Cyprus, and gas pipeline to link Israeli and Cypriot offshore fields to Greece's mainland. Greece is already at work to explore its own energy resources as a matter of priority. Currently, exploratory drilling is to be undertaken in 3 promising areas, Ioannina, Katakolo, and the Gulf of Patras, in 2014 or early 2015 at the latest. Apart from these 3 areas, Greece is engaged in a massive seismic survey program of its continental shelf that covers an area of 220,000 square kilometers. Indeed, the preliminary analysis of the data so far acquired indicates that the existence of a multitude of promising target areas in the Ionian Sea west of our mainland and the sea to the south of Crete. Furthermore, recently, 2 corporations showed interest in conducting research of hydrocarbons in the Thermaikos and Orphanos Gulfs. Those lay in the northern part of my country. Moving away for just a second from energy issues and focusing on broader political considerations, one could say that the 3 countries, Greece, Israel, and Cyprus, have come to know how to achieve and sustain stability, for they appreciate its value. They also understand that stability can offer synergies. Moreover, they know very well that there is no freedom without security, as there is no peace without justice. In the very same manner, there is no prosperity without peace and stability. All 3 of them share common values: freedom, justice, and prosperity as pillars of democracy and security. A world of opportunities is opening up for the region. For instance, imagine the multiplying effect, the possible benefits for the United States and its long-term interests should these 3 countries be able to combine and coordinate their efforts, achieving their full potential in the near future. Throughout its history, the United States always had the ambition to become the beacon of hope for the rest of the world, for peoples and countries aspiring to freedom, independence, and democracy. Today, in our troubled world, we also need regional beacons of hope. This can definitely be the case for the Eastern Mediterranean, where it seems that we need as many beacons of hope as possible. Let us not forget that the notion to emulate the fall of a paradigm was embedded in the works of great ancient Greek thinkers, from Homer to Socrates. With the help of those local beacons of hope, other people in our region currently fighting against extremism, fanaticism, and deprivation will feel encouraged indeed. Freedom, justice, and democracy can bring people together, transcending country borders and civilizations, especially in troubled regions where they are needed most. In concluding, next January, Greece will assume the 6-month presidency of the rotating presidency of the European Council at the European Union, and is getting ready to work hard to further enhance and support the stability of the Eastern Mediterranean, in which both the United States and the European Union have a large stake. We stand ready to play an important role and act as a link, or if you wish, as a catalyst for change. I can assure you that more than ever, Greece is fully aware of the need to continue to do its utmost for peace, stability, and prosperity in our neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Ambassador. Minister Cronin.
So Seth, you said earlier that we were going to go from right to left.
Yes.
I've been here for 20 minutes. I'm already violating protocol.
Well, some say that's what it's there for.
I can always say I didn't grow up in the diplomatic corps, so. First of all, thank you very much, Seth and Ken and everyone here at the Hudson Institute for hosting this important day, and B, inviting me to sit on this distinguished panel. It's very much appreciated. It's at events like this that I think about a recycled old joke that refers to one of Israel's great historical leaders, Moses. And the story goes, for those of you that haven't heard it, that Moses has coined one of the world's greatest geologists and worst navigators. So you've heard this before, obviously. So the greatest geologist because he could extract water from a rock, and the worst navigator because he took the Israelis to the only place in the Middle East without any natural resources. But it turns out that Moses knew what he was doing all along. Israel is, as you can tell from the title of this session, a Mediterranean country. Its culture has linkages not just to the Middle East, but to Europe as well. And as a result, there are natural connections and relationships between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus. Relationships that carry historical meaning, cultural tradition, and strategic importance. Dare I say, increasing strategic importance. Now, this natural covenant should not and does not come at the expense of any of our existing relationships independent of each other. And these relationships manifest themselves in commercial partnerships, shared values, not the least of which is the fight against terrorism, and tightening diplomatic relationships. Now, for those of you that have been following, it's easy to get a bit frustrated over the seemingly endless debates, as we were discussing earlier, as to how to deploy the gas. And the government of Israel has been exceptionally deliberate when it comes to finding the right balance between local consumption and exports. Some would say that we've been excessively deliberate. But as we discussed off stage, it's not every decade that an opportunity like this comes along. I've been in government, as you mentioned earlier, Seth, for a couple years now, and I find that one of the most overused phrases, if not the most overused phrase, is game changer, quote unquote, game changer. But this really is a game changer. And the impact on Israel cannot be overstated. By way of analogy, we see how difficult and how challenging it's been for the great beacon of light you referred to, the United States of America, to put together a budget or even a continuing resolution. My friends, the impact of these natural gas findings on Israel proportionally is the equivalent of at least 3 budgets. So you can understand that the stakes are high. Now, for those of you that are concerned over what exactly will get exported, rest assured that we are very much aware that the most critical thing to do is to ensure a market. And we will ensure that there is a market. There are a variety of export options and a surprisingly intriguing diversity of uses for local consumption. Now, these gas discoveries provide energy independence to Israel, but they will have impact on Greece and Cyprus as well. My colleagues, dare I say my friends, this is not a zero-sum game. I'm here to tell my Mediterranean colleagues that this is a burgeoning partnership that everyone can benefit from. And I'm here to tell my American friends that we are all part of an American alliance that's based primarily on shared values. U.S. involvement could be very important here on a number of fronts, and it is very, I can't overestimate, it is very important to us that U.S. interests be protected, and they will be. It is very important to us that the Israel-Greece-Cyprus relationship be strengthened. And it will be. Because while politics makes for occasionally strange bedfellows, commercial relationships make for lasting partnerships. And when you have shared values, aligned interests, and commercial relationships, the possibilities are truly as numerous as the grains of salt in the Mediterranean. Thank you very much and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Minister Groner. Congressman Schneider.
Seth, thank you, and good morning. Can everyone hear me in the back? So it is really an incredible honor for me to be here, to be on such an esteemed panel, have the opportunity to speak with the Hudson Institute. As was mentioned, I am probably the newest to protocol. I've been in Congress since January, so a little over 9 months, but not new to this issue. And what I'd like to do is try to bring some context, or put it all into summary. Going first, it's always easy to say something that might be seen as inspired. Going last, it's always the risk of being redundant, so I don't want to do that. But the Mediterranean has been called by many history's most talked about sea. It's where civilization has interacted and competed for over 3,000 years. It is known as the cradle of democracy, rightly so. It's the cradle of religions. It's a region of empires, and for 3,000 years it has been a contentious but also critical trade route. The ancient Greeks and Israelites used it for trade. The Venetians and Genoese, the early United States, and today the Suez Canal is that critical link between Europe and the Far East. It's crossroads and borders as well. It is the space where East meets West. It is the dividing line between North and South. As mentioned earlier, it's where the EU meets the Middle East. And it is, in many ways, the seam between Islam and Christianity and Judaism. Today, the region is fraught along many of these lines, and an area in many ways facing critical conflicts. We see in Egypt the line between the military and the Muslim Brothers. In Lebanon and Syria, where, as was already noted, there have been over 110,000 people killed, over 1 million refugees, and internally displaced counts upward of 2 to 3 million people. Every day, Israel faced threats from Hezbollah and Hamas, let alone other threats in the region. And Turkey, once a reliable ally, has started to lean away from the West. And this does not even touch on the economic challenges in the region. But with all that, the Mediterranean continues to be a bright spot because of the issue we're talking about today. There are many reasons for hope, and there continue to be what was called earlier a source of natural partnerships. Israel, Greece, and Cyprus are forging a new allegiance, a new alliance within the Mediterranean. And this natural partnership has the potential to become an arc of stability in a sea of instability. It has the potential to lead to unprecedented stability in the Middle East. We've touched on some of these already today. In the area of energy, we have seen the Euro-Asia interconnector was identified as the longest electrical line, underwater electrical line, has the potential to provide 2,000 megawatts of energy to the region, lowering energy costs for all 3 countries and helping to achieve energy independence. But equally important, this interconnector will create interrelationships, physically, economically, but also on a personal level. The Leviathan gas field, as is noted, truly is a game changer. This natural gas find provides, in the exclusive economic zones of Israel and Cyprus, has the opportunity to provide energy independence for nations that for so long have been dependent on others for their energy. It's going to change the fortunes radically of all 3 countries. Economic growth, stability, independence, but also, as has been noted, a source of a security challenge. The Leviathan field and the new energy opportunities has flared old tensions in the region. Israel, Greece, and Cyprus must remain steadfast in their partnership and their commitments to one another. The entire region can and will benefit from the new sources of energy, but also of necessity must rely upon the new sources of relationship. These partnerships have to be developed towards stability, and this is an area where the United States has a key role to play in this partnership. I like the word as a consultant, and we were talking about two past consultants on the panel, but a word in our business lives we used a lot was synergy. The idea of synergies on energy, on the gas fields, on the natural gas storage depot, liquid natural gas, within this arc of stability can't be overstated. On the boundaries of the world's most dangerous region, the alliance strengthens security and stability for the Mediterranean, for the Middle East, and for the United States. This border security is another issue that we need to focus on. It is a hot topic here in the United States, but it is no less a critical issue in the Mediterranean. And the role that Greece plays, I believe, has the largest coastline, but also the largest merchant marine as well. The role they can play in securing that north-south border cannot be overstated as well. Greece is playing a leading role in proliferation issues. In the decade-old Proliferation Security Initiative, which is a key tool to battling proliferation of weapons of mass destruction on the high seas. Without Greece, without their merchant marine, this initiative doesn't stand a chance of being effective. And as war continues to wage in Syria, we have to be extraordinarily mindful that the border and security and on the coastlines of Greece are important to protecting the security of the entire European continent. So as the United States reprioritizes our engagements in the Middle East, Israel, Greece, and Cyprus will become ever more critical. Through defense cooperation and intelligence sharing, they will help us counter the threats of Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and Syria. Cyprus' interest in joining and assisting NATO could bring even more stability to this region. Let me be clear, though. These relationships will be no panacea. Israel can't unilaterally rescue Greece and Cyprus from their economic problems any more than Greece and Cyprus can alone protect Israel from her existential threats. The United States must be a part of it. But together, all of us, together we can help make the world a safer, more secure, and more prosperous place, centering on the Mediterranean. I liked what you said, Ambassador, about freedom, justice, and prosperity. And together, we can work towards all of those. I am confident that the much improved relations among these three countries is a sign of greater cooperation and stability still to come. I believe, as was said, that these countries will be beacons of hope, that they will be agents for change. Here at home, in the United States, we must continue fostering and supporting these diplomatic relationships. We have historically been strong supporters of Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. I am proud to be one of the leading members and early members of the Congressional Hellenic Israel Alliance. It is a relationship that we know is important, that my colleagues know is important, and that's why it is playing such a critical role in this Congress. Through the alliance, we hope to highlight how the relationships between Israel, Greece, and Cyprus and the United States will be critical to maintaining the economic future, the prosperity, and security of the whole region. And with that, I say thank you, and I guess we open to questions.
Well, we're almost open for questions, because I want to ask one myself. And I'll set the tone here for further questions by identifying myself as Seth Cropsey from the Hudson Institute. Gentlemen, you've spoken very well, clearly, eloquently, about the relationship between the three countries in the Mediterranean. Congressman talked about the United States' participation in it. What, are there any specifics that the United States can do to, specific actions that the United States can do to foster this relationship, including the participation of the United States?
Can you hear me? I think, without question, there's a role for the United States in fostering this relationship. Start initially with the Leviathan gas field. The relationship between the countries in the region and the opportunity for exploration is being supported by Noble Energy in Houston. It is a place where we can help exploit the natural gas resources and make sure it's done in a way that provides security and economic development in the country. I think playing the bridging role, and this is where the alliance comes in as well, demonstrating to the world, I'll speak in my role as a member of Congress, that the United States and the United States Congress is steadfast in its support for these countries in the region because they are beacons of hope, because we share the values of democracy and the values of responsibly developing these resources and sharing them with the region is equally critical. So those are a couple of ways I think we can make that clear.
Thank you. I fully agree with this, and I would also suggest that the United States, they are also involved in this on the official level by stating time and again that the countries of the area, for the same token all over the world, they have the right to exploit their natural resources. That's very important because it comes from the United States. And as the Congressman suggested, they're already there on the business level because American companies, they do participate. But apart from that, the presence of the United States in this turbulent area of the world is by itself a piece of stability. So they are already there. We're looking forward to expand our cooperation and promote our common agenda. And I have a footnote, that's not against anyone. Everyone is free to join these four countries, I mean Greece, Cyprus, Israel, and the United States. We hope that others, they are going to join us in this common agenda we have. Thank you.
And if I may, just a footnote to what Christos has just said. I think this is where the U.S. has a very useful role to play, trying to get other neighbors in the region on board with what we're trying to do. The international legal order is there. The framework is there. The goals, I think, are the same for everybody. So I think it's useful if a third country like the U.S., which has vital interests out there, would try to get everybody on board so that we'd have a unified team in the region.
I would just add, my colleagues have spoken about the diplomatic role that the U.S. has, and it's not at all insignificant. Seth, you asked earlier about other practical things that can be done, and when I look at the relationship between the countries in the region, between Israel and the U.S., historically it's been based on a number of pillars. We talked more than once about shared values, etc. But an emerging pillar is the economic commercial relationship. And I think for Israel, one of our strengths is that we tend to learn new industries quickly. The flip side is that it takes us, there's a big learning curve to go up. And we have literally no upstream industry of which to speak of. And I think that the U.S. can play a very practical role in sharing with us experiences, not just vis-a-vis the companies doing the exploration itself, but also about different types of legislation, environmental issues, etc., that are going to be emerging in Israeli legislation as a result of this new industry.
All right. Very helpful answers. Thank you, gentlemen. Let's throw it open to the floor. There are questions, please.
Nikolai Rogakis, President of the American Hellenic. If I may, this is more directly directed to you, Congressman Schneider. The neighbor that you're referring to on the panel, we might as well put it what that neighbor is, and that neighbor is Turkey. In the diplomat's case, this country has caused problems, continues to cause problems for you on almost on a daily basis in some capacities. From Aegean incursions, where Cyprus now 39 years, you have Turkey, a NATO member, occupying Cyprus with what I like to say a NATO army. It's caused problems with security in Israel regarding the operatives that they've had in Iran, most recently bringing them to the forefront, and other issues. They've threatened potentially regarding the energy exploration off the coast of Cyprus, saying Cyprus does not have a right to explore there, so forth and so on. We can go on and on. Congressman, you are on the Foreign Affairs Committee. How concerned are you, and more specifically, and being more specific, regarding the actions of Turkey today to the future stability for peace, energy, commerce, and trade, and so forth?
Thank you for the question. I think as we talk about Turkey, we actually have to look beyond just recent. It's been a 10-year transition within the government of Turkey and the ascendancy of Erdogan. There have been a number of incidents. The most recently is the exposure of the assets in Iran, and I will confess I saw the headline. I haven't read the article today, but the United States has suspended a sale of UAVs, drones, to Turkey in protest to that. Turkey's strategy is evolving, and their emphasis, if you will, and I mentioned in my remarks, is moving from the west increasingly towards the east. And Turkey is a member of NATO. As a member of NATO, there are certain expectations we should have, are right to have. We, the members of NATO, are right to have. And I believe, and I'm speaking now for myself, and I will voice this as a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee, we need to convey those expectations and look for Turkey to be a partner for what we talked about of this arc of stability within the region, rather than a conduit for threats to it.
Please.
Thank you. Julia Clones, Economist Development Expert. My question has to do with the gas interconnector. There is, in the plans, there used to be an alternative, the Nabucco pipeline. Do you see any potential problems in the future regarding the application of the gas interconnector? Thank you.
So the question, you're talking about the pipeline from is it the gas line?
Southern versus the northern, the one that's different. There was during the negotiations, I understand there are conflict in marketing of gas. There was the southern, the top that was agreed, and the Nabucco, which would have been northern in Asia through Middle Europe.
This is northern of Israel. Thank you very much for the question. That probably what you have in mind concerns the Azeri gas. Very recently, the Azeri government opted for what you call the Trans-Adriatic pipeline, the TAP as it is called, which goes from Azerbaijan through Turkey to Greece, Albania, and Italy, and then it finds its way to the central northern European countries. So that has been dealt with. Of course, it remains to have an agreement, I mean, when it has the connector between Turkey and Azerbaijan. But I mean, the West Nabucco, as it used to be called, is not an option anymore right now. So we have TAP. We believe that responds to what our American friends, they repeated to all of us, diversification of energy resources, and of course, better prices for the consumer and energy security. So with the option of the TAP, which is a done deal already, we hope that we provide a good deal of this diversification, if I understood well, I mean, your question.
And may I add that the specifics of this question, this interesting question, will be addressed directly by the final panel of the day, so stick around for more on this subject. Next question in the back there, please.
Hillel Fradkin of the Hudson Institute. I guess I could introduce my question with an observation. I was noted that there were many references to antiquity and shared values, and reminded me of the fact that very early in the history of Christianity, a very famous theologian posed the question, what does Athens have to do with Jerusalem? After a very long discussion, characteristic of theologians, he said quite a lot. And it's impressive that today that can be said again. But as other panelists have reminded us, there are other cities, capitals that weigh in these matters. Washington has been referred to. What hasn't, I think, been much talked about is the EU itself. What do our panelists see the role or potential problems of the EU, considered as a whole, in either fostering this relationship, this four-country relationship? Is the EU really a party to it, or is it simply along the side?
Yeah. Well, bearing in mind that the EU is going to be one of the major receptors of energy coming from our part of the world, I think it has its role here is self-evident. In fact, in the Euro-Asia interconnector, it's funding a major part of this project. So there is a very active involvement and a very active interest on the part of the EU. At the same time, though, I'd like to repeat the point I made earlier about the necessity of getting the EU a bit more actively involved when it comes to talking to our neighbors about the necessity of working together jointly to take advantage of what we can have from the energy sector. So I think there's a multifaceted point of view for the EU here. And I think the EU is very much aware of its role, and it's beginning to work very much on developing its active interest in the region.
Yes, thank you, George. That was a very good point. And as I mentioned before, thank you for the point. Yes, can you hear me now? As I mentioned before, Greece, who is assuming the rotating presidency of the European Council, is going to place special emphasis on Eastern Mediterranean. As a matter of fact, probably I was not very well understood. The European Commission just recently adopted three, I wouldn't say mega projects, but very important projects which directly concern the area. Now, politically, the European Union, through Lady Ashton, who represents, according to the new institutions, the European Union, is acting as a Secretary of State, if you wish, as a foreign minister, is always active on the political level, but also economically. But you have a very good point there. We have to see more European involvement. And it's up to us, the southern partners of the European Union, to take the lead. Yesterday's visit of my Prime Minister to Rome and Malta was within this great framework. Thank you.
We'll have time for a couple of more questions, but I see that we're running out of time here, so we have other panels. But please.
I was in the IMF. Okay. I was in the IMF meeting, like journalist, and I was talking with. I was in the presentation of Turkey, and we were talking about the implications of a Syria war, the effects of the Syria war in Turkey, and the representative of the IMF told me that the cost to Turkey about all this war by the moment is around $3.5 billion. There are about 600,000 Syrians in this moment in the border of Turkey, because they are running away from that war. And if we consider also that Egypt is in turmoil, there is no tourism in Egypt. There is a serious economic problem now going on in Egypt. There is a terrible situation going on in Syria. My question is economic. How do you see all these implicancies? How do you see all these problematics? That there is a problem of unemployment. There is families that are living in the borders, in camps. How is this going to affect all your region, especially because it seems that we have forgotten the Syria situation, and we are in a lot of internal affairs here in the U.S., but the Syria situation is still there, and this problem is not solved. And this is one of the key areas that also we have Egypt there in a very bad situation too, right?
Maybe I'll start. What seems like years ago last month, Syria was top of our headlines, but I can tell you without a doubt Syria hasn't been forgotten. The impact of refugees, it's not just Turkey, it's Lebanon, it's Jordan, and I'll leave my colleagues to talk about that specifically, but if Jordan is overwhelmed, Jordan, a country of 8 million people, has 1 million refugees, not just from Syria, but from Iraq and from Libya. So it is a critical issue that we are aware of and are talking about substantially. But that's why I think the message we're talking about this morning of Greece, Cyprus, Israel, developing these energy resources, creating the economic opportunity, the impact, and to the last question, why the EU matters. The more prosperous these three countries are, the better it is for the region. The more secure these three countries are, the more secure the overall region becomes. So I think everyone has that shared interest. I don't know what direction Syria is going to take. I don't want to even try to prognosticate which way it goes. I know the only potential to a positive outcome in Syria is a political outcome in Syria. We need to do what we can, and I say we, the United States, to help promote and try to drive that level of an outcome. If we can achieve that, if we can give more stability to Jordan and to Turkey, that is a positive outcome, and then we move forward. But it's something that is not forgotten and clearly not off the table as we're talking.
If I can just add to that, remember what I mentioned in my presentation about how the European Union started from coal and steel. All the member states just after the war were in a very dire economic straits. Europe was in shambles. Basically, this reminds us of what's happening in our part of the world. The economy over there is in a mess. So basically, why don't we just try and use a focal point on which we can all work together, and especially on a focal point that has very, very rich prospect to offer. And we can build on that, working together in cooperation. And we'll try and build something along the lines of the European Coal and Steel Community, which evolved gradually into today's European Union. That's the philosophy behind basically our effort in this part of the energy development.
We have time for another question. Here in the front.
Thank you. Michael Kurzig, formerly from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The one country that has not been mentioned is China. And China, of course, the world's largest importer of energy these days. I wanted to ask Ellie about China's interest in Israel, in fact, whether the proposed railroad from Eilat to Ashdod is really on the table, and whether that's going to be built because of the question of the Suez Canal.
So I'll answer your question in 2 points. First of all, I can say emphatically that the Prime Minister of Israel believes strongly in the importance of the high-speed railroad. Really been part of his vision for a long time, and I happen to share that sentiment. I think that one of the key drivers for economic growth is increasing high-speed transport, etc. Regarding China, yes, we alluded to the various export possibilities when you look at the export dimension of what's going to happen with the natural gas, and clearly liquefied natural gas to Asia, to China, is one of the options that's seriously being considered. We understand that there's a timeliness to this, and it would be judicious of us to act quicker rather than slower. Having said that, there are a lot of not only political but economic implications to this, to where the gas that does get exported will get exported. There's a strong stream of support, Congressman Schneider, for Jordan, precisely for the reasons you mentioned. So everything is being discussed and everything is on the table, but no one's forgotten about China, if that's your question.
All right. I won't be the tough guy. We'll do another question here. One more, but only one. And then you will have a chance to ask other of our contestants,
Yes.
of our panelists, these questions, related questions in the future. So,
Dr. Papadopoulos, NATO has now 3 central commands. One in England, I understand it's a naval one in Germany, it's the air one, and the one for the ground is in Turkey. Taking in consideration that Turkey is going more and more towards the East and towards Islam and away from the West, was it a rational decision to offer this extremely important NATO command to Turkey instead of Greece?
Thank you for the question. As you know, the decisions in NATO, they by consensus. So there's a lot of discussion about this. Greece has the command in Larissa, as you know. So the rest of the, some of the arrangements that go back to the entrance, if you wish, of Greece and Turkey back in the late 50s into the alliance, the North Atlantic Alliance. Some that were recent, dictated but by the economic difficulties and the necessity to shrink the commands. They couldn't do otherwise. So there's a lot of discussion going on where and what is the threat, to define the threat. But all I can say at this stage publicly is that the result is the outcome of a consensus, which, believe me, it's not very easy to achieve.
and I can tell you that the next panel, not to be too much of an advertiser, is going to look at the security issues. So this question is a very live and very real one and will be discussed. I would like to thank our panelists, Minister Groner, Congressman Schneider, Ambassador Panagopoulos, Ambassador Ali, for their participation in this morning's event. Extremely important insights. I think an excellent way to begin this discussion today, and which I hope will continue in the future, and I hope that we'll be able to draw on your expertise in the future as we look at the subject. We'll have a 15-minute break now for whatever refreshment is back there, and if not, then you will refresh yourselves by speaking. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So nice to meet you.